Okay. Ready to start the meeting? This is October 13th, 2022, meeting of Jefferson City Planning and Zoning Commission. My name is Dale Vaughn, and I am the chair of the commission. I would like to remind the commission members to turn on their microphones and I ask everyone present to please silence their phones and other electronics during the meeting. We will go ahead and have the members introduce themselves, starting with the council liaison.
Mike Lester, City Council Liaison.
Trika Young.
Hank Vogt.
Bunny Tricky Cotton.
Emily Fretwell.
Penny Quigg.
Blake Marcus.
Shannon Hawk.
Greg Butler.
Courtney Bliss, City Planner.
And Eric Barron, Planning Manager.
Sonny Sanders, Director of Planning and Protective Services.
Dustin Birch, Associate City Attorney.
And Lisa Dittmer, Secretary.
The city code authorizes 9 regular members and 3 alternates. Alternates are designated to vote upon the absence or disqualification of regular members. A quorum of 5 members or alternates is necessary to conduct business. I declare that a quorum is present. The following regular members absent this evening would be Spencer Hopefeld. The voting members, are there any members who are disqualified from voting on any agenda item? None. The voting members are everyone that is present. We'll move on to case number P2201222216.
Well, just to make sure there's someone here to represent that case?
Yeah, is
Okay.
someone in attendance to represent this case? Okay, thank you. Are there any requests for a continuance?
No.
Are there any requests to reorder the agenda?
No.
Courtney, will you please read the format of the hearing and order of testimony?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to briefly describe the procedures of the commission. The proceedings of the meeting are being recorded, so please step to the microphone when you speak and give your name and address for the record. The standard order of each case is as follows. After introduction of the request by city staff, the applicant or their consultant will provide information on the request. The opening presentation by the applicant shall be limited to 10 minutes unless additional time is granted by the commission. The applicant shall have an additional 3 minutes for closing testimony if requested. We will then ask to hear from supporters of the request. We will then ask to hear from opponents of the request. We will then ask to hear from anyone else who wishes to speak on the request. Testimony shall be limited to 3 minutes each unless additional time is granted by the commission. City staff will then make their recommendations on the request. In order to reduce the time necessary to hear an application, references to staff reports and applicable findings shall not be read into the record unless directed by the commission. The commission will close testimony from the floor. The commission will then discuss the proposal, then publicly make its determination with reasons. The form of motion shall be positive, that is, that the motion shall be made to accept the request as presented or with modifications, stipulations, or conditions. A final vote will be taken with ayes in favor and nays opposed. The chair shall announce the results of the vote, specifying the number of votes cast in favor and the number of votes cast against. The following documents are entered as exhibits for all items under consideration at this meeting: the City Code of the City of Jefferson as amended, the Comprehensive Plan and Land Use Map, copies of applications under consideration, a list of property owners to whom notices were sent, the affidavit of publication of the public notice to the newspaper, copies of drawings, plans, and/or renderings under consideration, letters and memoranda from staff, staff reports, minutes of proceedings, correspondence, or other materials submitted by the public or the applicant. Rules of procedure for the Jefferson City Planning and Zoning Commission. These items are a public record and available for inspection through the Department of Planning and Protective Services or through the Office of the City Clerk. Please be advised that any items that are received, distributed, or otherwise that are presented, distributed, or otherwise received pertaining to the cases under consideration become the property of the Commission. This includes any photographs, drawings, petitions, and letters. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Courtney. Can I have a motion to adopt the agenda as printed?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed, nay. Motion carries. Can I have a motion to approve the regular minutes of September 8th, 2022?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion carries. Have we received any communications, and have any communications been distributed to the commission members? Nope. Moving on to the case. Courtney, could you please present the case?
Okay. So the subject property is outlined in a dark blue outline there on the screen. It is approximately a quarter mile south of Ellis Boulevard, and is near where Lorenzo Drive connects off of Ellis Boulevard and travels southward. And you can see Lorenzo Drive there is east of Stonehill Road. They kind of run roughly parallel to each other. The subject property is zoned PUD, Plan Unit Development, and currently has a daycare in operation there. To the north is also zoned PUD, Plan Unit Development, with open space, and then a little further north is a business, and then to the east is zoned PUD as well, with an office building there. To the south is also zoned PUD with a apartment complex there, Weathered Rock Apartments, and then to the west is zoned RS2, single family residential, and there's a little bit of RA2 there in the northwest corner as well, with vacant land. That is a closer-up image of the site. And some things to note about the site are there's a concentration of parking to the front of the building. To the north is some outdoor seating. To the back of the property is some accessory items such as chicken coops and playground equipment. And then there's one ingress-egress point on the side as well in the northeast corner of the property. A little brief history on it is that, so it is zoned again PUD, Plan Unit Development, has a plan associated with it, which was first approved in 1995. There was a Planning and Zoning Commission case which included a preliminary and final PUD plan, and it made mention of a 7,000 square foot office building with a 36 parking space lot. And then in 2017, there was a ministerial approval for a daycare, so that's when it transitioned from the office space to a daycare. So what the applicant is requesting today is to amend that PUD plan to include not only the daycare but also a coffee shop marketplace in that building. Here's a view of the front of that building, just to get a perspective on that. And then, so this is a rough concept sketch of the alteration that the applicant wishes to make. It includes a layout of where the coffee shop would be respected to the other uses, as well as the marketplace and then the daycare. And let's see. Okay. So this is a view of the outdoor seating there. And then, so this is a couple of photos of the inside of the building, including the coffee shop, some seating, and then also the little marketplace. And it's set up, but it's not in operation, not selling anything. And let's see, so the applicant did provide a narrative, a PUD plan narrative describing what they want to exactly do, which would be primarily, well, it appears to only be actually interior changes, just adding the coffee shop marketplace to the daycare. And they describe in there about hours of operation. And so it seems as though they would keep sales rather selective, and that they would sell products to families of the daycare within the standard business hours, Monday through Friday, and then would open up the sale to the general public during the weekend and then after 5 p.m. But I'll let the applicant describe more of that. And with that, if there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Courtney. Do any commissioners have any questions for Courtney? Do any commissioners have any questions for staff? We will now hear from persons who would like to present this case. Please come forward to the microphone and give your name and address for the record.
Hello, my name is Brandy Rodriguez, and the business is located at 2216 Stonehill Road here in Jefferson City, Missouri. So I'm just going to guess tell you a little bit about what we're wanting to do. So currently, I've been in this location since 2017. I own a licensed preschool. We previously owned a small coffee shop called the Greenleaf Cafe, and during the pandemic we closed, which is why you see some of the things move down here. When you own equipment for a coffee shop, you can't just disconnect and leave it in a storage unit. So we downsized our preschool back when the pandemic happened due to staffing and some other things that were happening with parents staying home. We just, our facility went from 90-something kids down to 40. And so kind of our goal right now is to reopen the coffee shop to help kind of keep funding what we have going on and not lose the building and the facility, because unfortunately there's just a really bad staffing shortage right now in childcare.
Thank you.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
Could you talk a little about the hours?
Yep.
I'm sorry.
The hours of operation, could you
Yeah,
talk a
so
little
right now
about
the
that?
school's open from 7:30 to 5:30. So our goal right now would be to open to the public in the evenings and on the weekends. We would like to be open to our staff and our families during the time that they're there. We have a lot of parents who would like to get some coffee in the morning after they drop off their kids. So that's kind of what our goal is right now.
Go ahead.
The market, what is the market?
So right now, we have chickens on the property. We have our egg license to sell to the public. We have a 36-bed garden that we utilize in our preschool. And so we would like to be able to sell some of those items in the marketplace. And that's kind of what that's about. I mean, the aprons that you saw there, they were made by a local family in our preschool. So just kind of a way to offer some other small businesses to be able to sell things through the market as well.
I got a quick question. Go ahead, Eric, if you want to go first.
Well, no.
No, I mean, my question would be, was there a market analysis done for that location for these businesses? To just kind of see exactly what the traffic will be, you know?
Nope.
And so, Mr. Chair, I'll add a little bit. There is some history, and some of it very relevant in planning and zoning history actions at this body. This particular business happened to be located off of Southridge Drive, going back prior to 2017. And at that location, they had a zoning of C1, I believe it was, at that location, and it was a site that had 3 separate buildings on it. And so this particular business had 2 of the buildings that were being operated as daycares, and then the 3rd building they were setting up to have exactly this, a coffee shop and cafe type of use. I don't believe that they actually had a chance to get that up and running when Central Electric Power Cooperative purchased the property. They were leaseors at the time. And a PUD plan for expansion of the Central Electric Power Cooperative site was presented to the Planning and Zoning Commission at that time. And that project is currently, I believe, finalizing construction. It's been a very big project. And you could drive by that site, and there's a very large retaining wall at what used to be their business location. But at that time, they moved their that cafe use to a commercial location up on Ellis Boulevard. And so they had a commercial business operating cafe use while they had their daycare just down the road. And so, going, into, the year of COVID, I believe, is about when the time that a lot of that was extracted. And I think Brandy could correct me if I'm wrong, but essentially when they moved the equipment out of their business, when they shut down that location on Ellis Boulevard, they essentially set it up within their cafe. So that's a really long way of describing some of the backstory, because as we show you pictures of the place already set up as a coffee shop, I would imagine that might cause you a bit of concern, okay? And so really the story there is it's been set up that way for a very long time already. And essentially, my understanding has been used basically as a break room. Very elaborate break room, but a break room nonetheless, not selling coffee to the public. So we have the benefit of seeing exactly what this use would look like, but it kind of looks like they're ahead of the ball there a little bit. And so that's some of the back history on that. Again, that's information that's tied to zoning actions with approval of that PUD plan, but then also some of the business licensing actions that have moved this particular business around to now its third location of being presented to you as a PUD plan. Courtney mentioned an administrative action approving a daycare there in 2017. So the original PUD plan for this property approved an office building. And so administratively, and there's several other locations around town, we have approved uses that fit within the office concept. In other words, a daycare is permitted in all commercial zoning districts. And so when a PUD zoned property is proposing a use that's very similar or something to what it's already being used for, we can approve that administratively. However, this is a step up. It's a retail and restaurant use, and so that's why it's appearing in front of you, is whether this location is an appropriate type of item for that type of use. Again, in a public hearing format. They do have some language tied to that to try to lay out business hours. I think some of that is very relevant when it comes to parking. Okay, laying out the different business hours that they're not coinciding necessarily with the same time as the daycare operation. But they also have a bit of an excess of parking, and also some of the area around there is currently vacant with a surplus of parking. Courtney, can you go back to the aerial photo? Yeah, that one right there. And so across the street is an office building that was used as a call center. It had a very large number of employees there. That center is relocated to a different area of town and is currently vacant. And so the fairly large parking, there's two parking lots, one right there at the very top of the screen, are there. Now, they don't own those properties, but I believe that, there's possibilities there if parking were to ever be an issue, but I don't think it would be. I hope that gives a little bit of background. It's a somewhat unique request, so I kind of felt it necessary to give you some of the backstory on that, and so hopefully that fills you in a little bit.
And that's an underlying C2, right? So, correct?
No, we haven't gotten necessarily to the recommendation portion, but we typically try to apply an underlying zoning district to PUD plans so that we're not caught in situations such as this, where, this is a unique one, and it's a perfectly relevant case in front of the Planning and Zoning Commission. But in other areas of town where it's a more highway or a customer-oriented PUD plan, we try to attach that underlying zoning district so that you can transition from retail to personal service type uses to possibly even a restaurant if the parking supports it, rather than having to come back in front of a Planning and Zoning Commission City Council action to do a use change. But in this case, it is an upgrade from office to something that's more customer focused. But we would still, in our recommendation, calls out attaching that underlying zoning district so that in the future there's something to look at if the use of the building needed to change again.
So if they were to vacate for some reason later on down the road, that would still stick with the property as far as that goes, or would it be a whole new?
It would stick with the property, and
Okay.
so it transfers. Yes, and so to give an example, if the daycare were to close, then they would have a list of uses that they could potentially reoccupy that space, with, being everything that's a permitted use in the C1 zoning district. So, again, we still do things like parking review when looking at things like that, but at least the uses are established. So.
Does anyone else have any questions? Okay, thank you so much. Is there anyone present who would like to speak in favor of this request? Seeing none. Is there anyone present who would like to speak in opposition of this request? Is there anyone else who would like to just speak on this request? Seeing none, we will now close testimony. Courtney, staff report.
So with the request, yes, was reviewed on various levels, including parking and traffic flow, and it was deemed that because of the way it was going to be operated in conjunction with the daycare, that it was not going to produce the 100 peak hour trips, and thus not needing the traffic analysis report. And then as far as the parking space calculations go, it was that there are in Article 5, there's a number set per each use. It'll say, for example, for daycares, it's 1 per employee member plus 1 for every 5 children. Then for like the coffee shop, it's 1 per every 100 square foot. But there's also a portion in there that talks about if the various uses in the same building, if they're under 20% of the total square footage of the building, they don't have to necessarily calculate those parking requirements separately. And so looking at this, it was that the marketplace and the coffee shop was not going to equal more than 20% of the total square footage of the building that it was going to be occupying. And so it looks like that it would have adequate parking. And there is going to be, so again, this is mainly interior changes, so there is no signage being applied for lighting, landscaping, anything of that sort. So it deems that it appears that this request is suitable for the area, and staff recommends approval of recommends approval of the request for a PD plan amendment. And let's get to, so there's a form of motion that basically recommends approval of this such PD plan amendment with the condition of the establishment of the C1 neighborhood commercial zoning district for the purpose of determining permitted usage and regulating signage and lighting and etc. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Courtney. Do any commissioners have any questions of staff? Seeing none, would someone like to make a motion? Oh, we're at that point.
I move to recommend approval of the major planned unit development planned amendment in order to permit the operation of requested coffee shop and marketplace uses with the following condition: established of a C1 neighborhood commercial zoning designation as the underlying zoning district for the purpose of determining permitted uses, signage, and lighting.
Second.
All in favor? What?
Aye.
So, discussion.
Yeah, go ahead.
Always discussion.
Oh, sorry. Is there any discussion? I always forget that part. Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion carries. And Courtney, this will be going on to City Council?
Mm-hmm. Yes, in November, so it'll get introduced on the 7th, and then it'll go up for a vote on November 21st. And it'll be held here at 6 p.m. in the council chamber. Oh, yeah, it'll be here at 6 p.m.
And so, yeah, that's introduction on November 7th, and don't necessarily need to be at that meeting, but I'd recommend you definitely be at the November 21st one, where it would be up for the public hearing. So, and if you have any questions, feel free to contact either one of us.
Okay, we'll move on to other business. Turn it over to Eric.
Oh goodness, staff updates on prior cases. There was a PUD plan for some parking off of an alley behind a coffee shop, and
What?
yeah, made the news twice. It was denied at the city council level. The mayor was out of town, but the vote was 5-5. It takes 6 positive votes to approve something at city council level. Therefore, it was not approved. And the business owner proceeded with construction very shortly thereafter. And so the parking lot area has been installed according to the original PUD plan. You can go out there and look at it today. And they have received their full certificate of occupancy. And so that case is finalized. So, yes, the city council voted to refund their application fees. Yes. So, correct. Yep.
So Eric, I had a question. So my understanding, there was supposed to be some marking related to that alleyway, related to the being a fire lane, maybe on that curb or something. Am I mistaken about that?
I believe the fire department intended to do something along those lines, and I would defer to them entirely on that. I believe within the PUD documents there was some language about signing it as a no parking area, but I don't believe that there's any fire lane built into the PUD plan. I don't think it was necessary. I think that fire lanes can be established separately from that. So.
We had, when we discussed it, we put conditions on it, and we wanted marking, but I guess when that got denied by the city council, then that all kind of went away. But I think that, wasn't there a discussion about originally there was supposed to be something up that wasn't up, and they were gonna, that still had to be put up? Yeah, that was part of the original thing.
And so the curb is there now, and again, I think the fire department is looking at painting that curb or the alley, one of the two. I defer to them on what they can or can't do there in terms of fire lane marking.
It's sort of anecdotal, but I've heard from the fire department, like other departments in the city, that getting the paint supplies, the dyes, are an issue, just like most new vehicles are a shade of gray or white. I heard that from the chief. I'm not sure how that plays in, but that is a concern. He did express, and he does have the authority to put the fire lanes in where he sees fit, I believe.
So the second item there is something that I was wanting to present to you. I apologize. There's some state laws that were passed, and I presented this morning to the city's Public Works and Planning Committee. That's a committee made up of 5 members of the City Council. And within their packets, I included some of these laws that were passed at the state level. I didn't get them into your packets. Your packets, despite the meeting occurring after theirs, actually comes out a lot earlier than that meeting. But I wanted to report to you anyway, because it looks like we're going to have to make some changes in the zoning code regulations with regard to home-based businesses. And so at the state level, there was the legislature, state legislature passed, and the governor signed, a bill that included a whole bunch of stuff, but some of it included changes to what cities can regulate with respect to home-based businesses. And those changes actually occur in 2 different chapters of the state statutes. And one of them specifically with planning and zoning powers, and then the other one kind of more general to what cities can do. That's kind of getting further into the weeds than necessary, but I wanted to to anybody who's looking at that, there's 2 different spots to look. But our zoning code, the city's zoning code, regulates home-based businesses. What we refer to as, or what the zoning code refers to as, home occupations, and they are permitted, except they're very limited, and essentially limited to what is in effect a home office with very limited, storage or operational type of activity that can take place at a home. Some of these regulations, include that, obviously a home-based business could only be operated by the resident. You have to live there to have a business there. You can't just set up a business in a house. There a limit on the scale of the business or the floor area that might be devoted to a business. Conditions on things like mechanized equipment. There's very limited ability to have any kind of mechanized equipment associated with the home-based business. Some conditions on vehicles and storage on site. But some of the main things is that customer and client contact for a home-based business cannot take place at the home, according to our zoning code. And so you can't have a type of business that relies on customers coming to the home to receive goods or services. Okay. Also employees cannot report to the home. So if you have be it a business that has a number of employees, you can do that as a home office, but you need to be meeting your employees off-site, such as at a construction site or somewhere else. And our code actually has a list of specific prohibited home occupations, things like personal services, what we refer to those as, things like hair salon or massage therapy, again, involve customers coming to the home, counseling, medical offices, repair shops for things like appliances or computers, again, dropping off of equipment and things like that at a home, photography studios, again, customers coming to a home to get photo shoots, and motor vehicle repair. Okay, so we process about 30 home-based business applications a year. And approve. That's what I mean. Approve about 30 a year. And in general, we get a fair number of inquiries from people who are looking at starting a business in their home. Sometimes on types of businesses that would not be permitted. Involve customers coming to the home, and we have to inform them that this is a type of business that would not be permitted there. We also get a lot of complaints from surrounding residential properties if there is some sort of either permitted business activity that they're noticing traffic for one reason or another, or a type of business, someone operating a business without the correct license or permit, and we have to take enforcement actions because generally complaints that come in from residential areas and stuff like that is oriented toward the traffic. Okay, a large number of cars coming and going at a site tends to generate concern from surrounding property owners. So anyway, that's what we have on the books, so to speak, today. The new state law that went into effect essentially limits cities' abilities to restrict home-based businesses. And businesses that qualify as and they actually define what this is, a no-impact home-based business, basically cannot be regulated, restricted outside of some very narrowly tailored regulations, essentially devoted to things like safety, building codes, fire codes, health codes, a little bit of ability to regulate things like traffic. Also, the state law calls out that a city cannot prohibit service by appointment. And so really what that means is making appointments with customers so that the customer would come to your home to receive goods or services. Okay, something is currently prohibited within our zoning code. And also that cities cannot prohibit specific occupations. We have a list of prohibited occupations. Okay, so there are some conflicts between our zoning code and this new state law. This is not unique. Often, cell tower regulations might come up at the state level that trigger amendments to zoning codes across the state, or the Supreme Court of the United States might make a ruling on a particular item, usually signage or something, and cities across the nation have to amend their sign codes. And so it looks like, we and possibly many other cities across the state are going to, need to be looking at our zoning code for amendments to make sure we're in compliance with that state law. So that's what we're going to do, prepare an amendment to the city code, and also to our application procedures for home-based businesses, and how we process and review those in response to this new state law. Namely to, again, remove those conflicting items. And then also, there are some areas that we do have some ability to either clarify or define. Things like excessive traffic that's laid out in the state code. It's not really defined, and we think we have some ability to call out what that means here at the local level. And so that's what we're going to be working on is, clarifying some of this stuff and, making sure that we're not in conflict with anything. I'll point out that, this is not how do I put it, a pass for home-based businesses on other codes that are already in operation, already adopted, things like building codes and health codes, okay? You can't apparently prohibit a restaurant from operating out of a home, but there's health codes that need to be followed, for example, and other things that would, probably kind of have the same effect. But health, fire, safety codes, property maintenance codes, those all still apply to homes. They don't get a pass on those just because of this. And then also, as I pointed out, things like traffic and parking need to be defined. There is ability to tie a parking requirement for a home-based business. And so we'd be looking to clarify what that would be. Those amendments would go through this body, Planning and Zoning Commission, then on to the City Council as a standard, kind of process for zoning code amendments. There's something I'll point out, though, and that is because this law is currently in effect, it went into effect, I think it was the 28th of August. We're really not in a position to deny home-based business applications that very clearly meet the law, the state law, even if they're in conflict with our zoning code, okay? And so we're in a position where we're going to be needing to be approving those types of applications. And so what that means is for many, many years, we've had a prohibition on customers going to homes. The state law now preempts our ability to regulate that. And, whatever one's feelings on that might be, our history is that this is going to generate a lot of concern from residential areas. And so, but we don't really have the ability to do a whole lot about it. So that is my report to you. We'll be drafting something up. I hope to have something to present to you next month, but we're not, necessarily moving, in a manner that, we want to be careful about this one, to some extent, but also with it currently in effect at the state level, we need to establish some clarity here at the local level. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions. And, we believe, we get the sense, and there might be some people that have a better handle on this, that there might be changes to this in the future at the state level, whether it be to clarify or, some of the language that was adopted. And so this could be an ongoing thing in the future too, as we react to, further changes at the state level. You know anything, Shannon? Yep.
Yes, I do. Thank you very much. This is a very controversial issue. Everything you said is accurate. The reason it's in two different sections of the law is because it's actually dealing with two different things, but I'm not really sure if the legislature understood that because it came at the very end of session and this was not properly vetted. It was placed on a bill and then it was passed. And it deals with working from home and home-based business. No impact home-based business. So as an example, I work for a law firm. I take my work home all the time. I take my legislative work home. I'm working from home. I'm not bothering anybody. I don't think the city has a problem with me working out of my house, doing my work. But no impact home-based business is a completely different thing. That is, you are operating some type of a business out of your residence. And that raises a lot of concern. And you are right, Jefferson City is not the only city. We have cities all across the state that we are trying to provide guidance to right now. We have some model stuff that we could probably share if you'd like to see it, that's not from my client, but it has come from other city councils that have said, hey, this is what we did, maybe you might want to take a look at it. But yeah, you're going to have to update, as you said, your zoning code, and there is going to be legislation to try to correct some of these problems. But as we all know, it'll be introduced and we hope to pass it, but there's nothing to say that it will, so this is an ongoing issue. It really is. So, no real good news, but the bottom line is that you can make some changes now to at least, you know, work within what the law is. I mean, we have no choice at this point, because you're right, it took effect August the 28th. So now we're kind of outside the law, and we've got to get back in. And then the law may change, and we may have to change something again, but we have to do that, so that's where we are.
Procedurally, what happens if an applicant now applies and we feel like we need to approve it based on what our understanding of the law is today, and then the law changes and we're able to then restrict that application? Are they in because they got their application in before the law allowed us to do so?
Well, and no, I mean, we've discussed some of that, and you know, I'd hate to be giving any kind of, you know, implied final answer or something on that, but you know, as a zoning code regulation, when zoning code laws change, you know, people are grandfathered in. There is, you know, language to, you know, buried in the zoning code, you know, as most good codes have language that, you know, if something in here is preempted by something with greater authority, then you still have to work off of that. And so it could be a grandfather situation potentially. So
I assume there's no restrictions on, or maybe limited restrictions on, the additional regulations that you could implement to maybe fill in gaps between what's now preempted and what's, you know, more broadly allowed, if that makes sense. But I guess, would the city be looking at, when you all are revamping the zoning code, putting additional regulations that you're allowed to do that wouldn't necessarily be a blanket restriction on at-home businesses, but maybe additional hurdles that are appropriate given the new preemption? Does that make sense?
yeah, I think a little bit, you know, what else can we put in there to kind of protect interests?
Right, like if you had, okay, we could maybe regulate how many, you know, the hours that you could have people going to the home or things like that, that may be workarounds that, you know, could provide a more regulated structure, but wouldn't be impeding the new law, if that makes sense.
So my kind of interpretation is that the law seems pretty targeted, you know, in calling out what can be regulated and what cannot be regulated. And, you know, there's not a whole lot of room for maneuver outside of that. There's a little bit, but, you know, our home-based home occupation regulations, I think, you know, were pretty thorough. There's a few tweaks that might, you know, could have been made, but they're pretty long, you know, and they touch on a number of items. And when you kind of compare the state law, it's like, well, no, you know, the people that wrote it, I think, you know, they knew where to target, and so no, there's not a whole lot of room there outside of, you know, traffic and noise and health codes. So. Yep. And so I think that's the major impact, is exactly that kind of use, be it massage, hair salon, possibly, you know, small photography studio. These are the types of businesses that we get the most requests, you know, people calling inquiries on. And you're right. And and I think the state law gives us the ability to establish that parking requirement that most homes would only be able to have one person at a time. And anything above one person, or, one an hour is going to generate a level of traffic that's kind of, that I think possibly we can regulate things like that. But so I think there's the ability to regulate, hair salon emporium from opening up in a neighborhood or something like that. But, the single person business owner having one customer at a time is, something that has been prohibited, and now, we won't have the ability to prohibit that, good, bad, or indifferent. The few examples that I have where such a business has opened up in a residential area, oh my goodness, the complaints roll in. Is it generating a traffic concern? No, not necessarily. It's one person an hour, but it's 8 trips a day, and sometimes that causes a concern in the neighborhood. And so yeah, it's there's two sides there. And so we'll kind of see how it plays out. So
I think just to follow up on that, one of the things that a city does, and an important thing that a city does, is protect the public health and welfare. And in doing so, business licenses and occupation licenses lets the city know what's going on, what's going on in this place. And when you don't have to do that, the city has no idea what's going on in there. And so a person has decided that within their home, they're going to open up a no-impact home-based business. They do not have to let the city know. No one knows what they're doing. They're calling it, in their mind, it's a no-impact home-based business, but the city doesn't know. Is it really? We won't know as a city in a particular instance if there's a problem until there's a problem, and then it's too late. Or could be too late. Maybe no one gets hurt, and we hope, we don't want that, but we won't know until there's a problem, at which point they're gonna call. Everybody calls the city to complain when there's a problem, and they're gonna hear about it, and we just hope that there hasn't been a really bad situation that's come out of that.
And so that's what I was going to point out is at least our again, we're still absorbing this. And so, we're still working through this to determine what can or cannot be done. But our kind of initial interpretation is that a business license, something that applies to every business in town, would still apply to that. But there is language that we cannot require them to get a home-based business, so something specific to the home. And I'm not even sure if an interpretation that a home occupation permit falls into that same category. Leave that to the attorneys. What's the difference between a permit and a license? But I think we still have that ability. And
concern.
And so
There's some concern.
What about a mechanic? Is that on the list?
So my major concerns are, that.
I got a concern.
Mm-hmm.
I got a
And
neighbor who loves working on his cars.
and so
Everybody else's.
there's a lot of language in there about if an activity is taking place that's not visible from the street, okay, then there's not room to regulate that. But there's also language in there about other safety issues and even environmental issues. And so at what point can a vehicle maintenance operation be regulated? Again, that's something that we have to look into. Do you have any information on something like that?
Said the same thing that there's a lot of focus on that particular, and everybody goes to there's language in the bill, and I don't have it in front of me, but there's language about it not being visible from the street, and so we can assume that someone's either gonna try to pull it in their garage or pull it around back, and they've got a fence or something and you can't see, but it's still going on. It wouldn't be a problem, I guess, unless there was noise. I mean, I know that there's still some language in there that requires them to, comply with the state laws to make sure that they're still, properly, like if you're working on cars at your house, properly disposing of, antifreeze, tires, all the things that, so they still have to comply with that. But it goes back to that visibility thing, and I think that if they're doing it in a way that's not visible from the street, it probably would be allowed. It does, that's a big issue.
We've been down that road, and it wasn't fun.
That's a part of it too.
What would this body's role be in those requests?
So our intent is to draft up stuff, and then, areas where there are decisions to be made, basically, we would point those out. Where there's not decisions to be made, we'd probably call those out as not really being flexible. I think, I've mentioned it a couple times, traffic and parking are two areas where I think there's decision to be made. We typically make a recommendation, have some sort of basis for it, so we present that to you, and see if that's kind of in line, or if there's a different kind of thought there.
Would you foresee it as us recommending something to city council, or would we be the final answer on some
Oh,
of that
no,
stuff?
you're a recommending body, and so as a code amendment, it would go on to the city council.
Gotcha.
So, yeah.
Dustin, go ahead.
I was just going to say, as far as the automotive repair businesses, there's still property code or property maintenance code things that we can consider as far as where they're storing them, things like that. So unlike this, where they could keep it out of the public view, the property maintenance code is from, or if we can see it from a right-of-way. So there's a little more wiggle room there for us to enforce some certain things and limit what they're doing. But yeah, I mean, if they pull it into their garage, there's nothing we're going to be able to do about it, probably, unless we have a environmental concern.
And so there might be building code regulations there. Vehicles are dangerous, and fuel and stuff. And so, when a house is being built, the garage gets sealed off, in terms of, because that's where the fire is going to start. So anyway, so we have some work to do at the staff level. We plan to put together a code amendment. We do our best to position that so that it addresses the areas where we can, and we figure we'd be back at some point in the future to change it further. But that's the general plan. So.
All right. Well, thanks for bringing that to our attention. Does anybody have any questions for him? Bonnie, do we have any good news on your family?
Oh, yeah, yes, I had a little boy born today, 8 pounds, 4 ounces. My first grandson, yes, and he's got a 3.5-year-old sister that's adoring him right now. So I'm just go see him tomorrow.
Congratulations.
You got yourself here to be with us.
Right, that's a.
Thank you for that.
And does he have a name?
Yes, his name is Waylon Garrett Cotton.
Nice. Congratulations. Yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you. Well, do you have anything else?
No, we're going to run short of members pretty soon.
Oh, yeah.
And so I believe Mr. Hoogveld is looking at pulling off of the Planning and Zoning Commission. Mr. Marcus is abandoning the city altogether and moving out into the county. And we already had one vacancy, and so that leaves the commission with 9 members. And so basically all the alternate spots would be sitting vacant at that point. I mean, it takes the formal actions to move alternates up, but, that's... No, but it has been tradition to make sure that it's spread out. And so if it's heavy in one ward, we try to target the others. And so I think I'm correct. I haven't looked at it recently, but the last couple times I've looked, we're not overly concentrated anywhere. So, yeah. And so, traditionally, we have, and this is tradition. Traditionally, we've kept an attorney on the board and an engineer. You know, not necessarily for engineering legal advice, but just to kind of have that spread. We still have an attorney, even after Mr. Marcus leaves, but we are currently, we're all right. Oh. Yeah, but yeah, one's leaving. So we don't have an engineer though, and so if anyone knows a aspiring engineer looking at interested in serving their community, that doesn't sometimes especially in a small town, if you're doing engineering work in the town, you get repeated conflicts of interest. But if it's an engineer that isn't necessarily doing that local work, it might be a benefit to see if they're interested in filling out a volunteer form.
So we don't have anybody on the waiting list to.
Yeah, I haven't looked recently, but it's always been short. I think COVID has had an effect, across all of the volunteer boards. That for one reason or not, or the city in general is just not getting a lot of applications for the boards and commissions. And so even if someone's not interested in planning and zoning, but might be interested in other areas, I'd encourage them to to fill out, to look into it at least. And it's our HR department or the mayor's assistant, Jennifer Shikanik, can give information on what opportunities there might be. I think she generally receives those applications and maintains them. So, but
Put the good word out. Call your engineer friends, and your
Yep.
attorney friends.
no, we got an attorney. We're okay there.
Okay, we're good.
So-
Okay. Call your realtor friends.
As long as
You know,
Emily's not
realtor,
going anywhere.
We need more.
So,
All right. Okay,
that's all I got.
that's it. All right. I declare the meeting adjourned.